Welcome to the WTF Fantasy Football Show. Got Jim, Brian, Tony. Last week we weren't here because we were eating turkey. Or we were preparing to eat turkey. Or we were blowing up the floats for the Macy's Day Parade. Jim, how was your Thanksgiving?
Mine was great. I'm not a real big fan of those floats, though. They scare me.
Brian, how about you? Do you have any experience with blow-ups?
Dolls, yes. Turkeys, no.
No turkeys there. I'm not a deep fryer of the turkey either. Jim, have you ever deep fried a turkey?
I've eaten deep fried turkey, but I've never made it. I don't have a deep fryer. That thing scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I feel like if you deep fry a turkey pretty soon, I'm going to be getting a trailer home.
Yeah,
you're going to end up on live PD at some point. Like,
nice.
You're in Pasco County, or let's go see the Cincotta residents.
Welcome to TF Fantasy Football. Now, last week, I got to ask, Brian, I'll start with you. Jim, I know, has played football. Jim played college football. I played some football in my time. Now, Brian, how about you? Did you play football growing up?
I am 150 pounds of fury. So in the Oswego State University Fraternity League, I was an unstoppable wide receiver and corner, but that's about as far as it got. I actually went to high school. I couldn't get on my high school team with Marquise Walker, who was the all-time leading receiver at the University of Michigan, played for Tampa Bay. So those are the kind of guys who went to my high school. So I wasn't seeing the field.
All right, I'm going to ask Jim the question first, then, just to do this to get it. Jim, did you ever punch a guy wearing a helmet, as Leonard Fournette did this weekend?
No, I could say I honestly never did anything that asinine and stupid. Not only that, it cost them the game. What an idiot.
Yes.
It just cost them the game.
It definitely, Brian, it definitely did. I mean, the guy was unstoppable. He had his best game of the year going. They would have had the ball on the 1 yard line, and he runs from the sideline all the way to the other side of the field, gets in the battle of the tunnel because someone slapped Carlos Hyde in the back of the head.
I mean, most football players, you have to admit, though, these are guys who are willing to get their brains beaten in and day out, year after year. I mean, this isn't like we're dealing with brain surgeons here on defensive linemen, offensive linemen. This guy's a running back. It's not. I don't know. I can see why guys do it because you're so primal at that moment. It's man on man. You go out there, you want to start a fight, but no, don't be an idiot. Don't punch somebody in the head. I mean, that's just craziness to me. But it's Buffalo. The first thing I thought of is this is the greatest day in Buffalo because now you've got boozed up fans, a fight, the Bills won. That just had to be pandemonium in that Thunderdome parking lot after the game. I wish I was there.
I couldn't get over how stupid. Look, you see the other guys in your team fight, and as a young guy, you don't want to be thought as the P word. I'm not going to say it out loud, but you don't want the other guys to think you won't get into it. But to go in there and start swinging at a guy who's not only got a helmet on, but he's got a full face mask. It just, man, that's like hockey players that get into fights with helmets on. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So as a result of Fournette's actions, we had an offensive coordinator lose his job before Christmas. We have a quarterback lose his job before Christmas. And who knows what else is going to go on there. This is interesting, Jim, how the dominoes fall with the Jaguars. The Jaguars are a team Tony Romo predicted to be in the Super Bowl. Last year, they came in within one bad call of going to the Super Bowl, according to Jaguars fans. How do you see this disappointment? Like, is this the biggest disappointment you've ever seen?
Personally, I don't know if it is. I mean, I didn't really expect them to go crazy this year. I know they got there last year. The defense was a huge part of it, but defenses don't ever usually have back-to-back outrageous seasons. You just don't see it very often, and that's what we're seeing this year. They're not playing up to that level, and without Fournette for most of the year, even though Yeldon did a really good job, in his place for most of the time, it's just not the same with that. Wow, we're getting a big echo here again. Sorry, guys.
Brian, how about yourself? When you think about the Jaguars this season, what were your expectations coming in?
I mean, how could you not think they were going to be one of the class acts in the AFC? You have a tremendous defense. You've got a great running game that worked last year. Everybody was taking Fournette early in their fantasy drafts. I was kind of on the fence as to why that was happening because he's not a huge part of the passing game, but it all comes back to Blake Bortles. There's no reason in the world you should have extended him another year along with Marrone and the OC and all these guys. And I know Doug Marrone. Doug Marrone was the head coach here in Syracuse, and so Nathaniel Hackett was his OC. Then he went up to Buffalo, 2 hours up the road, and he was a savior there until he quit on that team. So I know all about Doug Marrone, and his act wears thin, and that I think is what happened. And that he's lost that Jaguars team. That's a disaster in that locker room right now. I think Coughlin's going to come out of the GM booth or wherever he is, and he's going to take over coaching that team because he's got to lay the smackdown on these guys and crack the whip.
Well, this team has been, just made so many terrible decisions over the years, and firing the offensive coordinator now is a joke. It means nothing. The whole problem stems from not getting another quarterback instead of Bortles. And you can take it all the way back, and I mentioned this today, you can take it all the way back to the fact that they passed on Russell Wilson to get a punter in that draft back then. Imagine if this team would have had Russell Wilson all this time and how much better they would be with Russell Wilson. Instead, they go out and draft Brian Anger, who hey, look, he's not a bad punter, but come on.
We'll ask real quick, Brian, we'll start with you before we get off the Jaguars. Is Cody Kessler the answer? And if not, who do you think is the best backup quarterback in the NFL?
You can look behind me at the framed Philly Special Sports Illustrated with Nick Foles on the cover if you want. But in terms of Cody Kessler, I mean, if Cody Kessler is the answer, I don't want to know the question.
Yeah,
so maybe he's better than Blake Bortles. He can't be worse.
Well, he can be.
Well, I mean, we've seen the Chad Henneys of the world come in Jacksonville and be successful over the years. So, they've got good receivers. Just be competent. Don't turn the ball over. Hand the ball off to Fournette. Find Westbrook. Find Moncrief.
Well, as soon as Fournette gets back from his one game suspension.
You still got Hyde, you got Yeldon, you've got good players on that offense. That should be a playoff team. That's a joke that they're as bad as they are.
Yeah, but it's not all on the offense too. The defense hasn't played, what everybody expected from.
The defense, I'll tell you, here's the problem with the defense. And it's today. They got rid of Paul Postlosny was there last year, and now they got two outside linebackers occupying the middle. And nobody can stop the run. And I think it's just bad from a scheme standpoint that they're going to have to draft a middle linebacker or bring one through free agency. And it shouldn't be hard to do because they only play 2 downs in today's NFL and sometimes 1 down.
And they got rid of Dante Fowler earlier in the season. They traded him at the deadline, which was kind of puzzling to me. He seems to be a pretty good player, and the Rams have incorporated him very nicely into their defense, as we saw the other night. But I don't know. That's what happens in the NFL. Look at all the teams that were in the championship games last year. The Eagles stink, the Vikings stink, the Jags stink, and the Patriots are the Patriots. But I mean, you could say the Patriots aren't as good as they usually are. So that's a cyclical.
Oh, wait. I have to jump in there because I'm gonna say they're not as good, and a lot of that comes down to Tom Brady. When was the last time you saw Tom Brady throw a deep ball that wasn't short this year?
Oh, I'm not saying that they're as great as they've always been, but they're better than the other 3 teams that I was mentioning is what I should say. I mean, they're still going to win their division and make the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, no doubt of that. I'm just saying Tom Brady has not looked like the same Tom Brady this year. And, a lot of people were speculating, it was Gronkowski. But every time I watch him play, every time he tries to go for a deep pass, it always comes up short. Not something you equate with Tom Brady.
No, I definitely agree. And a lot of people were giving an excuse early in the season because of the lack of wide receivers, but he just hasn't played well.
I mean, if you strip the name off the back of his jersey, he's not even a quarterback 1 at this point in fantasy. And, everybody who laughs when people ask, should I play Dak Prescott over Brady? You know what? There's plenty of these games in the right matchup. I say yes.
Especially this week, he's, gets to play against the Vikings. I know guys in leagues, they had Brady, and as soon as a guy like Jameis Winston hit the wire, they were jumping to get him. One guy I know he traded to get Lamar Jackson just for the upside. It's almost like there's no upside with Brady. which is so crazy to say now because it's sort of like, all right, they're going to run the ball with Sony Michel, and there's no pizzazz with that offense anymore. It's like, what the hell happened with the – oh, watch, we say this and they win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
But you're dead on, Jim, where it just doesn't seem like the same offense anymore.
First game this week, Saints and Cowboys. I'll tell you what, I expect this game to be lower scoring than the Saints have been involved in lately. I really like the Dallas defense. The Saints defense the last 5 games have played really well. I don't think you can totally stop Drew Brees, but I think the game's a lower total. It wouldn't surprise me if it was in the low 40s at the end of this game. And then secondly, the Saints wide receivers. We're seeing Drew Brees spread the ball around here, Jim, and every week it's a different guy.
Yeah, Austin Carr gets involved. He, third game in a row with a receiving touchdown, and then we even got Dan Arnold and Keith Kirkwood both had their first career touchdown last week. So again, we've seen this before with great quarterbacks. They're going to throw to the open guy. Doesn't matter what the name on the jersey says.
Brian, which Saint wide receiver do you look at not named Mike Thomas?
It should be Traquan Smith. After his big game 2 weeks ago, I saw he did get some limited practices in this week, so we're hoping he could come back. When you're looking for another pass catcher, I'm going to say it's going to be one of the running backs, maybe Alvin Kamara. So I'm interested to see that chess match of those young athletic Dallas Cowboys linebackers against that running game and Kamara out of the backfield. That's going to be fascinating to watch. Everyone's drooling over Leighton Vander Esch. I want to see him out in the flat chasing down Alvin Kamara. Good luck.
I agree. You know what? I really think those Dallas running backs, this is going to be the game. I think the clock keeps moving. It'll be really, really interesting. From the Cowboys side of things, Jim, how about the wide receiver position? We, of course, make the trade Amari Cooper. It's improved him. He made a couple big plays last week. But who's the number 2 wide receiver in Dallas?
Yeah, right now there is no real – well, actually, Ezekiel Elliott is the number 2 wide receiver at this point. Everything else is a total crapshoot. I really thought Allen Hurns would step up. He hasn't. Michael Gallup, gets a flash here, flash there. That's about it. Cole Beasley, same thing. He's never really been much of anything that you can count on. Amari Cooper, though, the thing with Amari Cooper, he has definitely opened up this offense for everybody else, including Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. So he's done his job. He had the great game last week, no doubt. 8 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kind of leads me to believe I'm not sure I want to play him this week. He's not been known in his career as being a back-to-back big game player.
You know what's amazing? We got the Ravens and the Falcons going at it, and we talked about Lamar Jackson earlier. The Falcons might be the worst defense in the league. They got a ton of injuries. Jim, Lamar Jackson, top 5 quarterback this week?
I don't think he is. And this is what really boggles me down with Lamar Jackson. The defense has to keep them in the game. If they get behind, he doesn't have the weaponry, the arm to be able to bring this team back. And that's why I'm having some concerns that eventually next week, I think they bring Flacco back against Kansas City, because if they get behind, even with that great defense, if they get behind, Lamar Jackson doesn't have the arm to bring him back into the game. And he's definitely not going to do it on the ground. So, he's got high upside on the ground. Nice, he's got a nice floor. We got the floor with him. But with that passing arm, and he's just not very reliable yet at that point, I can't really trust him that high. I think he ends up as a QB1 this week, but I wouldn't put him top 5.
Tony, how about this? You know how they always had like wildcat packages for Lamar Jackson? You flip the script. You have wildcat packages where Joe Flacco comes in to throw. Now you move out Jackson to the wide receiver. He just stands there like a dope, like all the quarterbacks always do. And then Flacco comes in and throws the ball. That's his package. He comes in on throwing downs.
And that's the other reason not to like Lamar Jackson all that much, is because I think at some point they will start sprinkling them both in for whatever reason. So it's tough to really have a lot of faith in him going forward. I know people are, really jumping out of their skins wanting to get him involved. He's had a couple of good games, putting up fantasy points. But, man, I don't know if I could trust him for the rest of the season. Now, this brings up a great point that I want to talk about real quick, and then we got some questions in the chat room we'll discuss. But how stupid, we talk about how stupid Leonard Fournette is. How stupid is Mike McCarthy having Aaron I'm not Mike McCarthy, I'm sorry, the Indy coach, having Andrew Luck run pass catching routes? How stupid is that? He gets him laid out this week, so he gets nailed, lands on his shoulder. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to put your star quarterback out there catching passes?
It was an unbelievable hit that he took. Thank God he popped back up.
And I mean, the week before they tried the same thing, and he laid out trying to catch the ball. I mean, how stupid is this?
They've got the lucky horseshoe up their butt there in Indianapolis. They figure we had Peyton Manning, end of his road. We got Luck. If Luck gets hurt, we'll probably get the first-round pick again.
I don't know. To me, that's just. I mean, I understand you're trying to be innovative. You know what? Don't make your star quarterback get hurt again after you waited a year and a half for him to come back from his hurt last time. I mean, sometimes it just makes you want to, walk up to him and say, "Hi, idiot."
Real quick before we get to the chat room, speaking of the Jaguars quarterback situation, Brian, who would you rather have next year, Eli Manning or Joe Flacco as your quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Can I pick AIDS? I mean, what would I rather have? I mean, like, good Lord. It's funny because I keep seeing people now, Giants fans, and Jim could probably speak to this, saying like, oh, look, now we got to keep Eli around. This is great. And I see Cowboys fans saying, yeah, we're going to extend Garrett. And for an Eagles fan, this is all music to my ears. But, boy, if I got to have one next year.
Hey, I'd still take Manning over Flacco. Sorry. I don't like Manning, but I'd still take Manning over Flacco.
But I guess I would too. At least the team kind of galvanizes behind Eli, and they seem to like him. Joe Flacco just seems like kind of an unlikable dude, and the team just kind of flows around him.
Yeah, I'd still take Eli over Flacco. And you asked the question early, we never really answered, but I'll tell you what, the best backup in the league to me, I bet you wouldn't be – my choice would be Teddy Bridgewater.
Why does everybody like him? I don't get it.
Man, did you see it? I like this kid. He plays a good, smart game. And if he could stay healthy, he's going to be a good starting quarterback in this league.
How smart is he? He had 14 touchdowns and 12 interceptions.
Yeah, that's okay. Not all of those interceptions were his. If you watch the games, a lot of those things were passes that bounced off receivers' hands. And, man, I can't, that's like one of my biggest pet peeves in football. If a quarterback hits a receiver in the hands, and then the ball bounces up and gets intercepted, that should not be an interception against the quarterback. I'm sorry. He put the ball where it was supposed to be. The damn receiver who's making millions of dollars couldn't catch the damn thing.
If you play in today's NFL and you have 14 touchdown passes, not good.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes has that at the half.
Yeah, right. Hey, I just think this kid is going to be I still think he's going to be a good strong starting quarterback in this league. I thought the Saints did a great job getting him out. Look, everything I see about him, I like. He's got good technical features. He's got a strong arm, can make all the throws. He's smart. In the offense he was in before, okay, he made some mistakes. I'll grant you that. But, man, I think he's got plenty to go.
Is he locked up for another year?
I think he is with New Orleans, yes.
So they're going to make the smart play in the offseason, I'm sure, of trying to trade him.
I'm sure they would. It really depends on how much longer Drew Brees wants to play, to be honest. I mean, it's not like I don't think anyway, that they're going to put Taysom Hill in as their starter when Drew Brees is done. And that leads me to another thing. How stupid is you got one of the best all-time quarterbacks in the league in the history of the game, and you take him out at the goal line to put Taysom Hill in. How stupid is that? Come on.
And you've got
I agree 100%. Like, it drives me insane.
I just hate that. It's like, oh, are you kidding me? If I was Drew Brees, I'd be standing there like, get off my field. Get off my field.
And it's not like they don't have two of the better running backs in the league.
Yeah.
You just give the ball to Ingram. Put Ingram and Kamara back there in the shotgun on either side of him.
It's just too many weapons, and yet you got to put this Taysom Hill in. Again, people trying to be innovative. Sometimes they just get too cute for their own good. Okay, before we keep going, I want to get to some of these questions in the chat. We got a bunch of people in the chat, so thank you guys for coming hang out with us. Miley Robert wants to know he's in a three-way tie in his league, needs his win bad. Standard league, he needs one for a flex: Galladay, Sanders, Sutton, or Boyd. Okay, well, I'm going to make it easy. I'm throwing Sutton out right away.
Yeah,
he doesn't belong in the same qualifier as the other three. I don't like Boyd with the backup quarterback and with A.J. Green maybe coming back this week. It's just a little too much. I think they try to get Green a little too involved. So to me, it comes down to Galladay and Sanders in a standard league. I don't know. I go back and forth on this. I think I'd have to go Sanders after he finally got back involved last week. But Galladay going up against the Rams, man, that's enticing. The Rams over the last 5 weeks are the worst team in the league against opposing wide receivers.
Not only that, Jim, the Rams will score 40 against the Lions, and Matthew Stafford will finally have to throw the ball. Yeah. I like Kenny Galladay, but I think it's close. I could go either way. And I agree. It's only a choice of two. It's only Sanders and Galladay to me.
What say you, Brian?
I agree with you guys that just because he's going to get double-digit targets, but I believe Aqib Talib could be back this week. I saw that today, so that could bolster their secondary. I'm higher than you guys are on Tyler Boyd. He did catch a touchdown pass from this quarterback this week, and if A.J. Green's back in, then he can kind of slide back to his normal 1A, 1B role and maybe maneuver a little more. And it's going to take pressure off him. He gets a lesser corner from the Broncos, and that'd be my second choice. But Galladay, I believe, is the answer here.
Okay, there you go, Miley. Let's see. Lou Landers wants to know, does Gronk being back change my outlook on Brady? Not really. I'm not, Brady will get his fantasy points or at least close to it, but it's not like anything we've seen from him, in the last few years, even close to it so far on the season. Will that change? Could it change? Absolutely, it could change. It's Tom Brady. Come across at any point. Gordon's rounding in Edelman's there. If Gronk is finally getting healthy, absolutely, he could start putting up big numbers. All I'm saying he doesn't look like the same down the field quarterback he's always been. It just doesn't seem like he has the arm strength this year, and that's what I'm down about him on.
Yeah, I agree. That pass that he caught was short, but I think Gronk. Even though he came back to life in that game, and if you guys played DFS, he was underpriced, and people were jumping on him because he was underpriced. But Jim, he's lost a step and a half.
Oh, he has.
He's low in that game. If you guys go back and watch that game, he's lost at least a step and a half.
Yeah, he definitely looks skimpy when he's moving around. He's not natural at this point, and I agree with that. But they're going to take whatever they can get from him at this point. But yeah, I don't know if we'll see him fully healthy again this year. Brian, any thoughts?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, guys. But if you have no other option and Brady's your guy, you got to ride with him and hope you get some targets here. We'll see if Rex Burkhead coming back helps, open anything up in that offense. And I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit later. But I think Brady can surprise us. It's kind of game script specific. Watch, he'll go out this week against a good Vikings defense and throw for 304 touchdowns.
Well, that's why I say it's always possible with Brady and Belichick. When they get their heads together, they can do that. But he just hasn't been doing it all year, and very hard to trust right now. And look, let me ask you a question. You're going into a game that you need to win to get into the playoffs right now, knowing what we know about what he's done all year. Are you comfortable putting him in as your starting quarterback?
Depends on my options, to be honest with you.
Okay, Lamar Jackson.
I'm playing Brady over Lamar Jackson all day long. Lamar Jackson could go out and put up 6 points for you, and if he doesn't run, then you're kind of screwed. So
how about Kirk Cousins?
Oh, I would go Cousins.
How about Winston?
Jameis against the Panthers secondary is not good. I liked what I saw for Winston. First time I liked anything he's done in 2 years last game. I would probably go Jameis Winston.
I know I have him rated higher this week myself, as I do with Cousins. Brady scares me. I'm not saying he can't come out and have a great game and put up fantasy numbers, but he just hasn't been doing it consistently enough that I'm willing to really take a shot on him this week if I absolutely need to win. I want somebody who's got, shown a little bit more upside lately. Every once in a while, and I deal with Scott Engel every Sunday, and he says this all the time. You got to strip the name off the back of the jersey and look at the numbers. And sometimes he's right. Right now, that really gets up there with Brady because he's just sitting in the middle of the pack as a QB2. Look at Stafford. He's not even in QB2 range anymore.
You know what's interesting about that comment, though? Just taking that comment and see what you guys think. We've gone through 12 weeks of the season, right? A guy like Tom Brady has an 18-year career. A guy like Matthew Stafford has a 10-year career. Do we just count the 12 weeks and throw everything else out? And say we were in week 6, would you just count the 6 weeks and throw everything out? Where is the line? Like, football's the hottest sport because it's the least amount of games.
I think when they say strip the name off the back, but okay, let's look at his opportunities. Let's look at his weapons. Let's look at the coach and the situation. And let's look at that. He's got the best coach in the game. Let's look at his weapons. He's got Josh Gordon. He's got Edelman. He's got a really good pair of running backs, Gronk. Everything lines up for Brady. It's just a matter of they run the ball more now than we seem to like because he's not putting up the big fantasy numbers. I mean, he's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, he's still top 15, I'd say, but I don't know how many better options you're going to find on the waiver wire than Tom Brady. If I got him and I have him, I'm playing him.
3 out of the last 4 weeks, he hasn't gotten over 19 fantasy points. And normally, when you're looking at a quarterback, you're trying to hope for at least 20 to get you that starter number. And 3 out of the last 4 weeks, he hasn't done that.
One of the weeks was 324 yards. The other one was just shy of 300 yards. Maybe they're just games he's not having to throw a ton. I mean, they got blown out in one of the games, but
Titans crushed him.
I'm looking at their schedule though. Jets. You just played the Jets, and now you got Vikings, Dolphins, who always give him trouble. Then he's got games against the Steelers and the Bills.
That's some tough defenses right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's some tough defenses, no doubt. Which means he'll probably go off for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. Okay, next question. Tyrone Ward wants to know. He's hurting it. Tight end. Lost Jack Doyle, who just went on IR. I feel your pain, Tyrone. He hurt me too. But he's been streaming Gerald Everett and Jonnu Smith. And he wants to know how he should prioritize them going forward. Or he could also get Arnold from New Orleans. Now, look, I know Arnold has been the new toy lately, and he may see some stuff here and there, but you also have Josh Hill to contend with, and every once in a while you got Watson to contend with. Too many tight ends in that backfield for me to like any of them consistently. Jonnu Smith, right now he's getting involved. He's scoring touchdowns with Mariota. I think I'd go there. Gerald Everett is, of course, on one of the best offenses in the league with the Rams, but there's too many games where they don't have to throw a lot to score with that running game that they have. So I think I'd go Jonnu Smith here. What about you guys?
Yeah, of those two, I'm going to take Jonnu Smith because Gerald Everett just might not see the targets. Even the game where he scored a couple of touchdowns, he's not getting that many looks. I check your waiver wire, see if Chris Herndon's available from the Jets. He's basically their number one option now, and he's getting a boatload of targets every week. So of those two, I'd go Jonnu Smith also.
I go Jonnu Smith, and I would also check the waiver wire and look for Herman in Denver. He's leading them in targets the last 5 weeks, and make sure he's on.
Actually, he's about to go on IR, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
He got a bad injury this week, and he's done for the season.
I didn't know he was done for the season.
Yeah, so everybody's trying to jump on his replacement, Matt Lacoste, and I don't know if that's going to come out and work in their favor. I'd rather take.
You know what? I would take, and that's a good point. A lot of times when you look at the offenses, right, they'll go to the same places regardless of the player. So I would actually take a shot to pick him up if I didn't like my tight end situation.
Well, there's not many teams out there that like their tight end situation this year. If you don't have one of the big three, you're hurting. And I don't even mean Gronk. I'm talking about Zach Ertz, Kelsey, and Kittle so far this year. They're the big three. Gronk is, a distant four. Ebron, well, probably right up in that conversation, especially now with Doyle out. That'll definitely work in Ebron's favor.
Cameron Brate, if he's available too, definitely a guy. He should be priority
absolutely.
number one.
That was a steal this week in DFS. His price was at $3,400, knowing that Winston always, jumped all over him, and there was a lot of good tight end options last week in DFS.
See, that seems to, that drives me crazy. That seems to be the big talk. Oh, Winston loved Brate last year. If you look at Brate down the stretch at the end of the season, he didn't do crap with Winston. He didn't do crap. Everybody's got this thing that he had such a great season with Winston last year. He had a decent season, but then when they got to the end of the season, he didn't do nothing.
I think Winston fell off at the end of the last season.
Yeah, I don't know. I like him. He'll do a little bit. We had a big discussion last week, and somebody was asking me Brady or Gronk, and I just said, look, I can't start Brady over Gronk. I just can't. That's me. He's got too much upside. Brady doesn't have that upside. And then Brady scored right away. And right away, I got a tweet from this guy saying, oh, man, look, you told me to start Gronk, man. Oh, that's so bad.
Don't you hate that? I mean, you guys have been doing this forever. When you get some clown.
Passion. When you don't wait till the game's over, guys. Wait till the freaking game's over. If you want to yell at me, if I'm wrong, then yell at me. I'm okay with that. Not the freaking first quarter.
Or how about this? It's your team. It's your call. Like, you're the one who has to live with if you won or lost. Don't go tweeting at Tony Cincotta and Jim Day because they told you a player to pick and it didn't work out for you. I mean, it's your team. You take the responsibility. If you screw up at work, whatever, you don't go blame, some guy I asked on CNBC told me to do this. Like, no, take it, grow a set of balls out there, people.
Yeah, I don't blame the people that complain on Twitter. I blame their parents. They was poor upbringing.
I always tell people, and the few people who are dumb enough to ask me a question on Twitter, and I just say, always go with your gut. Whoever your first choice is, just go with him and sleep well, because at least you'll know that's the guy you liked. You got a coin flip chance.
Yeah, right. And that's, and the other thing they don't realize is, it's easy when somebody asks, oh, should I start this wide receiver or this wide receiver? But when they start getting into throwing in all different positions in the same question, and which one do I start? And you need, especially on the chat, on the frenzy, they ask all these questions and, with all these multiple position players, and they want an answer right then and there. Like, holy crap, give me a second to think, guys. It's like, it's okay when it's the same position, makes it a little easier. But when you start breaking into different positions and try to equate them together, that's where the hard part comes in. And people don't realize that. It's just like, oh, that should be an easy question, but it's not.
What else we got, Jim?
Let's see. Lou Landry says the only thing worse than Eli or Flacco is Nathan Peterman. Well, that's okay. He'll be running an ice cream shop next year. Don't worry.
He's in a class by himself, Nathan Peterman.
Oscar Morales wants to know, should he play Jared Goff rest of season or fit in Trubisky in the playoffs?
All right, this is a great question. I think you never play anyone the rest of the season. I think you go and you look at each matchup. Jim, I say that because I'm an expert, and I've been doing this a long time, and I never take my own advice, Jim. I just go with the same guy I play I go with the same guy that I picked first, and I never change. But I think you should play every matchup and each week evaluate it.
I do the same thing, Tony. I hate that because you draft a guy and you go like, yep, there's my lineup, and then you have all these guys off the waiver wire you pick up for your bench. And you're like, oh, look how smart I am picking up Traquan Smith in week 5. And then when he blows up for 400 points, you're like, oh, shit, he's still sitting on my bench. Then you drop him.
Look, the good thing here, with Goff, and look, there's times with Goff that he doesn't have to throw a ton all the time. But they're in the hunt right now. They're looking for home field advantage. They want the number 1 seed. They got New Orleans right there with them. So they're going to have to win all these games to really ensure that they can do that. And they can't even do that even if they win out. If New Orleans wins out, they get it because they beat them. But they have to keep winning. So you don't really have to worry about them sitting anybody. So that really plays into it. And, they do have maybe not the greatest matchups in the world, but some decent teams the next 3 weeks with the Lions, Bears, and Eagles. Of course, in week 16, they get the Cardinals. That may be the game that I may go to Trubisky at because the Cardinals might be too easy for him.
Oh,
They may
Trubisky's
just
hurt
run all
also,
day.
folks.
Well, right now he is, yeah, but he's expected back, if not this week, then next week.
Yeah, you know what I like about Mitchell Trubisky as opposed to Goff? Like you said, the Cardinals, right? They could get up early and then you get Todd Gurley to death. Trubisky always gets some running yards as well as those passing yards, and they run a lot of up-tempo plays that I think he always is going to have 30 passes, which you're not going to get from Goff every game. In fact, last year, that was one of the problems I had with Goff. He just didn't have enough throws to be an elite quarterback. This year got a little better, but if they have some easy games, I would worry about that. I actually think the floor is lower on Trubisky.
I'm going to give you a horrible anecdotal story here. I drafted in my biggest of big leagues Jared Goff to be my quarterback in like the 12th round. After the first 2 weeks, I dropped him.
Oh,
I watched their games and I go, this kid just isn't going to throw the ball enough. It's all Todd Gurley. He's going to score 3 touchdowns a game, which he basically does. And now fast forward, you're catching up on the waiver wire with the Winstons of the world, and Jared Goff's like QB7 on the season. So he's turned it around, but you got to be aware of those games where it's going to be the Todd Gurley show and he's going to throw, 1 touchdown pass. It's what we're talking about with Tom Brady. It's the same thing.
Jim, I'm going to take a guess. I think Brian cut Jared Goff for Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Maybe.
It may be something along that. Odell Beckham's breakout year, what was that, 4 years ago? I had him and then dropped him for a kicker.
Oh,
because I'm like, no one's going to pick this kid up. I got to stream a kicker this week, and I can get the Denver kicker coming off a bye.
Were you voted GM of the year that year?
My friends never let me live that one down. They're like, you host podcasts and you make these asinine moves. Hey.
Yeah, we all make them at some point.
That's how you learn.
I don't know if I've ever done that though.
Yeah, I don't know about that one either. But
usually I drop a kicker for a kicker. I don't like dropping position players for kickers no matter what. I just usually don't. Doesn't matter who it is. Okay, let's get back to our list then, Tony. What we got? That seems to be all the questions in the chat room.
All right, chat room people, you're all done unless you get some out there real quick. We got our 20 minutes in the chat room. Fire away. Next up is the Broncos and Bengals. We talked a little bit about this game. I'll tell you what, I think it's very interesting now without Andy Dalton there. Do they try to run the ball like crazy with Joe Mixon, or do we see that A.J. Green comes back? Do they take the gloves off a kid that couldn't even, he wasn't even that great at college, this kid at quarterback?
I tell you, looking at this game, the Bengals are a mess. I almost don't want anything to do with them. I mean, obviously, if you have Mixon, you have to play him. On the opposite side, I love Phillip Lindsay. I'm building DFS lineups with Phillip Lindsay in them. I don't care if he's splitting with Freeman or Booker or any of these guys. That Bengals defense is so awful. That kid scoring 2 touchdowns this week. Guaranteed. Put it in the bank.
Brian, when you said you don't like anyone, you have to play Joe Mixon. Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure. If A.J. Green plays, don't you have to play him?
If you have A.J. Green?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I meant to say is if you have Joe Mixon, of course you have to play him. You probably don't have that many better options than Joe Mixon. But I'm not a fan of Dalton. Boyd, if you need him, I guess. But I'm always worried about guys coming back off injury because there's a real chance he could re-injure it. He's out at the half. Now you're screwed in a must-win game where he gets you 3 points. And then
he's got a backup quarterback.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question. I do the same thing, but I think we get burnt by not playing these guys sometimes. Jim, is there any way you would not play A.J. Green if he plays this week?
Absolutely. It really depends on my options. There's a lot of guys I like more than him with the backup quarterback coming off the injury. Like Brian says, you never know if they're going to make it through the entire game, and that's a scary fact. Week 13, most likely if you're still in it and still trying, then you need this win, and it's really going to be hard to count on him in this game with the backup quarterback, no matter what the matchup is, and it's not great to begin with.
Denver's a very good team. Nobody talks about them. They're right in the mix now in the AFC for a playoff berth, and they're beating good teams. And the ones they lose to are super close games. So they're not the vaunted defense of 3-4 years ago, but they're very, very good.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. It's going to be very, very interesting in that game. I think the Bengals have nailed it in. When they're talking about Hugh Jackson taking over the team next year, I kind of wonder what the hell's going on.
You want to talk about stupid? How stupid would that be? Holy crap!
That would be like signing a guy who just got arrested for domestic violence last week.
Yeah, really.
Good Lord.
That was one time when I was happy that the league stepped in and said, "Oh, okay, you want to pick him up? You know what? We're going to put him on the commissioner's exempt list, so he doesn't count for you guys. How about that?"
But if it wasn't the Raiders, it had to be the Redskins that would pick him up, right?
Or Cincinnati.
That's true.
They've had a history of that themselves. So look, it is what it is. It's not like we don't have people that are playing in the league, have been playing in the league, that have had things like this in their past. Heck, I mean, everybody thinks of Larry Fitzgerald as such an idol, but a bunch of years ago we were hearing this about him and his live-in girlfriend and how he, pushed her to the ground and held her there because she was trying to take his son away from him. And, if they're going to do it, they should do it across the board. To everybody who's ever been there, you got to sit out, things like that. It's so half-assed the way they do penalties and things like that.
Lions and Rams go at it. We talked a little bit about this game. Brian, is a Josh Reynolds a guy you can have confidence in your lineup each week?
Confidence, no. But if you're in a deep league and you need a player, he fits all the criteria. He's starting, he's in a great offense, and he has a good quarterback and play caller with him. So he's checking all the boxes right there. I mean, I'm in leagues where I'm scraping bottom of the barrel here, and I'm looking at the Dante Pettis's, Curtis Samuels of the world. So I would probably rather have Josh Reynolds than those guys just because of what's around him. And he's, he could just fall into 7 targets for 85 yards and a touchdown just because of the offense he's on. So am I feeling good about it? No, but you could trust me. You could look at some of my lineups and be doing a lot worse.
Okay. Now I'm going to jump in here because I disagree with that. I say put him in and feel good about it. Look, he may burn you once or twice, but look, he's in a perfect situation. This team runs 11 personnel over 96% of the time. They've run 11 personnel, 690 plays on the season. The next highest team is the Buccaneers, who have run it 524. So 170 times plays less on the season. And not only that, in the 690 plays they've run out of the 11 personnel, which if you're not clear is 1 run back, 1 tight end. That's where the 11 comes from. And 3 wide receivers. They run that more than anybody else. And they're also the most explosive at it. With their 690 plays, they've averaged 7 yards per attempt.
Well, I mean, I've got guys like Robert Woods out there who are starting every single game. And there's times where he just kind of disappears and he's a focal point of their offense. I mean, they just have so many guys that they could get the ball to that, it's not like they're going to say, all right, you're in, you're the guy, you're Kenny Galladay because we have nobody else. They got a lot of everybody else. So
I understand that, but a lot of times with a third wide receiver, you got to worry about them being on the field first. And all I'm saying is with him, you don't have to worry about him being on the field because he's going to be on the field all the time. So that gives him a leg up over a lot of other guys. And then when you add in the fact of the upside he has in playing in this high-powered offense, I mean, there's a lot of guys I play him over without even a thought. Now, I'm not talking about guys that are normally wide receiver 1s or even most of the wide receiver 2s, but once you start to get to that edge of that wide receiver 2 into the wide receiver 3 range, he vaults most of them for me.
Up next, Cardinals and Packers. Jim, I got to ask you this question. Are we done? Well, the Packers, I think, are out. 4-6-1. The best thing to finish 9-6. It doesn't make the playoffs. So here's the way I'm looking at it. Do we start to see the young wide receivers that we saw with all the injuries, or does Mike McCarthy have to win the rest of the games to keep his job?
I think Mike McCarthy needs to go. He is so terrible. I don't understand what they see in this guy. Look, what I'm not getting is that they're not even getting Marquez Valdes-Scantling in now. Last couple of games, he's been a recluse, not even being involved in the game plan. they're going, almost always to Devontae Adams first, second, and third in the passing game. Really, nobody else is stepping up and doing anything at this point. Equimania St. Brown isn't doing much. Jimmy Graham is hurt, and he's got that big wrist cast thing on now. But they just keep going to Devontae Adams. And talk about another quarterback who's not returning in value on investment for where you drafted him, and that's definitely Aaron Rodgers.
Great stat from the Next Gen Stats over at NFL.com. Graham Barfield tweeted this out. Aaron Rodgers is the only QB in the league that is throwing outside the numbers. So that's basically, outside the hash marks, down the sidelines, on over 56% of his throws. The average in the league is 39%, which means everyone else is throwing inside the numbers, the middle of the field, tight ends, running backs, slot receivers. So it just shows you they're funneling all their targets to the outside, and basically it's Devontae Adams. They've got to find a way to get creative with somebody else. Maybe that they're missing Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson was really good coming out of the slot, and he could pop outside if he needed to him. He doesn't have that anymore. And Devontae Adams is great, but I think they missed Jordy Nelson a ton on that offense.
But it doesn't make sense because Marcus Valdes-Scantling has done well when they gave him the shot early on, looked good in preseason. When he got involved early in the season, he was much more involved than he is now. He's their number 2 receiver. I
think it's a trust thing. You look at how much of their offense is based on Rodgers just running around and making shit up, sort of like Russell Wilson. And he had a chemistry with a Jordy Nelson and with a Randall Cobb, who looks dead out there now. And maybe with these young guys, you saw the frustration early in the year. He just didn't have it. He's like, I don't know, these guys got to learn. They got to pick up the offense. So I just think he's not connecting with them in their horrible run around, make a play offense.
Got to ask a question. Got Buffalo this week in Miami. All the rage is Lamar Jackson. Isn't Josh Allen a better fantasy option? Josh Allen runs like crazy, but he can complete a pass.
We had this same conversation last night on the show I do with my man Dwayne McFarland, and I said in a DFS environment, everyone's jumping on Lamar Jackson. Why don't you pivot over to Josh Allen? It's the same guy. Like you said, he can complete a few passes. If you're looking for a dirt cheap option, you could build a lot of lineups with a Josh Allen there, and you don't have to stack anybody with him.
Yeah, but the problem with that is, I get it. He's got more rushing touchdowns on the season than he does passing touchdowns. He's only thrown 3 passing touchdowns while he's run for 4 touchdowns. The problem is there's only been one game where he ran for a lot of yardage, and that was his last game. Before that, he hadn't run for over 40 yards. He had the 2 touchdowns against the Vikings rushing back in week 3, but it's not like it's been a consistent rushing attack by him. So if he gives you that big rushing game to go with that mediocre passing game that he's going to give you, then that works. If he doesn't give you that big rushing game, then, man, he could just flat out kill you.
I'm gonna stop for all the people that are watching and that are out of their playoffs, don't have a shot. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Brian, Bills. We got the Bears and Giants go at it. Brian, is Saquon Barkley the first pick in the draft next year?
If he's not, he's number 2 behind Todd Gurley. I still think you have to take Gurley because of how good that offense is, and the play caller is miles ahead of anyone the Giants have. But, man, yeah, he's going to be number 2. No doubt about it.
I totally agree with that. There's no way you can't take Gurley number 1 next year. 2 years in a row just playing lights out in a great offense, with an innovative coach that just knows how to use him and get him involved. No, I mean, I love Barkley, but no way. I got to take Gurley before him.
I'll take Barkley. I just think that he catches more balls. That I'll go that route.
He said balls.
He gets there. Same game. Jordan Howard, is he non-fantasy irrelevant anymore?
I wouldn't start him at this point. And talk about having trust going into the playoffs. I have absolutely none left in Jordan Howard. He could still have a good game. I'd be okay with having him on my bench.
If he doesn't score, he's going to kill you. He's not going to catch any passes, and they're just not going to give him the volume. So, yeah, he's better left on your bench.
I would take any of the guys that catch passes, no matter who they are. McGuire, Richard. I'm sorry. Any of those guys over Howard at this point.
Panthers and Buccaneers. How many Buccaneers wide receivers can you play this week against Carolina?
38.
Yeah, as many as you can get on the field. Carolina, man, it's just.
So you would play Humphreys? I
would play Humphreys. I like Humphreys going against Carolina. Carolina, on the year, they're 21st. Over the last 5 weeks, they're 26th against opposing wide receivers. How about Godwin? Yeah, I like Godwin as well. I mean, I want a little piece. The only one I'd probably leave off that is DeSean Jackson.
Brian, how do you feel about that?
It's funny. We were talking about this yesterday, and Dwayne was bringing up the your guys' favorite terminology, the air yards that DeSean Jackson has, and it's pretty incredible how many air yards he's getting for that Tampa Bay offense. He's just not connecting on one of those big plays. Adam Humphries is getting a lot of these little dump offs, and he's scoring balls here. I think he's got 60 yards in three straight games.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Sure.
The one thing we've always known about DeSean Jackson, even before we had such a great stat as air yards to use, is that he was a boom or bust big play receiver. That's what we know about him. We've always known that. If he catches the big play and scores a touchdown, he's gold. He doesn't catch that big play, doesn't score that touchdown, he's going to give you garbage that week. We've always known that. I don't understand how air yards helps us understand that.
I think we're just looking at, is he still a part of the offense, or has he been phased out? And from that, it's showing that he has not been phased out. He's still a vital cog in their offense, even though they have other guys who are producing. He's on the field.
Except Winston sucks at the deep ball.
Well, I'm just saying he's out there. He's got a thumb injury, though. So let's watch that this week. Let's see if he practices. If he's out, then, yeah, fire Godwin up, fire Humphreys up. And Mike Evans, he's always in your lineups.
And inconsistent every week. He's one of the best inconsistent wide receivers in the game, Mike Evans.
Oh, absolutely. He puts up some big games, and then has, a couple catches the next game. Colts and Jaguars. The Colts, Andrew Luck's been on fire. But you lose one of the tight ends. He still has Eric Ebron. He has T.Y. Hilton. Nobody else is catching passes. Jim, do all of a sudden we see a receiver get involved with the loss of the tight end?
No, actually, they're just going to bring in more tight ends. They're just going to keep doing that. They like to do that. They don't really have a problem with that. I know they just called up another guy. Who the heck did they just call up? I'm sorry, I lost the name totally. But they brought up another guy. Eric Swoop is still out.
Mo Alley Cox.
Mo Alley Cox may get in there, listed as questionable at this point. Didn't practice today, I don't think. So, at this point, it could just be the Ebron connection. But you say no other wide receivers have stepped up. I'll give you a name that has, and that's Dontrell Inman has been playing pretty well for them lately.
Yeah, he's been all right. Yeah.
No, he's been getting a little bit more involved than anybody else. So I'm not saying he's a great wide receiver to own, but if Luck is liking him at this point, you get what you can out of him and run.
Brian, on the other side of the ball, who are you playing at running back this week? Carlos Hyde or T.J. Yeldon?
I think Yeldon should be the play just because I think the Colts can score points and he's going to be able to catch some passes. Not saying Carlos Hyde can't. But if I had to
thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Carlos Hyde used to be one of the best pass catching backs in the league. Just saying, I'm glad you clarified that.
So I'm going to probably say Yeldon. I think they're just going to utilize him more for whatever crazy reason. Why they traded for Hyde was beyond me, but I'm going to go Yeldon.
That Carlos Hyde trade has been bugging me ever since they did it. Especially, they make the trade and they say, "Oh yeah, but we know Fournette's going to be back in a week and a half, so we're okay with that." Why make the trade? That doesn't make any sense. The thing that kills me is still in the fact that T.J. Yeldon is the number 14 fantasy wide receiver in PPR leagues on this season. It's just people just don't equate that with T.J. Yeldon. But he had some really big games there for a nice clump. Last two haven't been great, but I at this point, I think I got to ride Yeldon.
Yeah, see, I got lucky. I have Fournette in a lot of best ball leagues, but I picked Yeldon in all those leagues. So I didn't lose anything because of how well Yeldon's played. But I think Hyde gets a lot of shares of the ball if the game's close this week.
Yeah, but is it going to be close? That's the problem I have. I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to be close. I don't think Jacksonville's defense can keep up with Luck right now. And I think Luck is just going to throw the ball right down their throats.
All right, speaking about games that are close, Chiefs and the Raiders. I think the Chiefs take this by over 21. But the fantasy question is, Brian, the Chiefs defense sucks. Which Raiders would you play in this game?
I'm playing the Chiefs fantasy defense in a number of leagues. I aggressively went to get them just because I think they're going to get some turnovers and score. If you're playing some Raiders this week, I mean, just open up the obituaries and thumb through the names, and that's probably half the guys starting at wide receiver for the Raiders this week. I think Rashard's got to be in there. Doug Martin has been quietly very productive, so you could get some numbers out of Doug Martin, I think.
As long as he gets a full week of practice in and is healthy.
Yeah.
But Jordy
wide
Nelson,
receiver, you can't trust any of those guys.
Jordy Nelson is back
receiver
this week, fully healthy. But in week 13 after this season, how could you put him in your lineup? Heck, really, in reality, in week 13, if this is a must-win, how could you put any Oakland player in your lineup?
Well, I'm concerned about Doug Martin. You bring up Doug Martin because I think that he has to get in the end zone for him to be anything because I expect him to be down a lot, and I think Jalen Richard could catch 8 balls in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And he might be the only one. But even then, he might catch 8 balls, but it might be for 35 yards.
That's 11. I got running backs to get less than that, Jim. Sometimes
I understand that, but in a must-win game, I don't really want somebody who's going to has a ceiling of 11 points, which is basically what his is 11, 12. I'd rather take a long shot on somebody who has more upside than I would with him. Pretty much anybody else.
Vikings and Patriots. We got a running back coming back to the Patriots, Rex Burkhead. We got a tough Vikings defense.
Oh, okay, wait. Let's just nip that crap right in the bud. Man, I've heard more people yelling about Rex Burkhead and how he's going to affect this running game, and they got to pick him up this week. And you know what, people, don't pick up Burkhead. He's not going to do you a damn thing, just like he didn't do a damn thing in the beginning of the year, just like he never done a damn thing before. If Michelle goes out again, they're going to go right back to Cordarrelle Patterson. It's not going to be Burkhead. He's not that guy, and there's no way Burkhead is going to play over James White.
I don't know. I think if you got a deep bench spot, you could throw him on there.
Yeah.
You could do worse because the team likes him. He's that Swiss Army knife guy that can find a role, and he's that annoying Patriots
who's the
guy.
better one in James White.
Okay, but you've seen it in the past where they like to get him in there. They utilize him out of the slot. I'm just saying, you can find worse guys. You want players in good offenses. Why not take a good offense?
I like Jim's confidence that Cordarrelle Patterson is going to outplay Rex Burkhead.
I saw a league where a guy picked up Patterson this week. I'm like, what the hell am I missing? But okay, more power to you.
Hey, it's only in the off shot that Michelle gets hurt again. It's going to be Patterson that steps up because they saw what he could do in that role, and he did a good job for them.
I'll tell you what.
Exactly what they needed him to do. Look, man, Burkhead has never done nothing in this league.
The Patriots believe in Patterson more than people give them credit, and a one play was the signal to me. You got a guy that wasn't a running back. They have the ball on the 1 yard line, and they gave him the ball. And I'm like, are they out of their minds giving Cordarrelle Patterson the ball on the 1 yard line? Belichick believes in the guy.
Could you imagine starting a fantasy Super Bowl in 3-4 weeks, and your starting running backs are Cordarrelle Patterson, Josh Adams, and Gus Edwards.
Hey, it's very possible. Look, the one thing you could say about Gus Edwards is he's getting more carries than most of the running backs in the league, with 20, averaging over 20 in his 2 weeks at running back. He's gone over 100 yards both those weeks. Nobody else on that roster has even come close to 100 yards all year. So, I don't like the fact that both of those guys, I like Allen and Edwards as running backs, especially like Edwards because he's just a straight north-south runner. And, He just hits a hole and goes. No dancing, no garbage, just goes. I love that. But the fact that both of those guys don't really catch passes always, puts a little, you just hard to start running backs that don't catch any passes. But man, Josh Adams is getting more work. I liked him last week. I actually played both of those guys in a DFS lineup last week, just trying to see what I could work out otherwise. And it worked out well for me. In that same lineup, I had Dante Pettis.
Seahawks and 49ers. Speaking of Pettis, last week in DFS, I had a 49er wide receiver in all my lineups. And it was the
Bourne.
It was the Bourne ultimatum, and it didn't work out well for me, Jim. What's going to happen this week?
I got laughed at by Mike Blewett and Scott Engel on Sunday morning because they were talking about Kendrick Bourne, and I'm like, you know what, guys? Don't be surprised if it's Dante Pettis that comes out this week. Tampa Bay just can't stop slot receivers whatsoever. And I just figured Pettis, was finally going to have a good game. I didn't think it was going to be that good, but I took it. But they laughed at me for that, so I can't wait till Sunday.
Brian, do you like Pettis or Bourne this week?
Well, I think the 49ers moved up to take Pettis in the second round, I think 44th overall. And going forward here, they're going to want to see what they have in this young kid. He's a good player, good route runner. He's the future, player on this team. He's going to be in there with Jimmy G. And they're going to see what they got with him now. There's no point in going back to Garcon if he ever comes around, or who knows what's going on with Marquise Goodwin.
Something with his sister not going well. So, yeah.
So hopefully everything's okay there on a personal level for him. But, yeah, it's going to be Dante Pettis.
They're both going to be out again. Garcon and Goodwin don't look like either one going to start this week. So you're going to have more Kendrick Bourne and Dante Pettis this week. But now they're going up against a Seattle defense that, while isn't great, they're better at home. And it's going to be a tough matchup for Nick Mullins, who's going to start again. I think Seattle is just going to crush them.
Real quick, Chargers and Steelers. Jim, has John Connor hit a rookie wall?
No, I don't think he has. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but I don't think it's because he's hit a rookie wall. I just think for whatever reason, he just wasn't being used enough. And actually brings me to another point, something I got to get off my chest and ask you both. Okay, if you're the Giants and you're really trying to win, how do you get Barkley 4 touches in the second half of that game when he dominated the entire first half? If they're truly trying to win, which let's get it out there. They've been showing mixed signals by trading off Eli Apple and Snacks Harrison. That was one signal. Then they come back and win 2 in a row, meaningless games that mean nothing except getting a worse draft pick. If they're really, truly serious about wanting to win games, how do you get Barkley only 4 touches in the second half?
No, that was ridiculous. Pat Shurmur should have been fired right then and there. You can't play a game like that. He is your offense. They have Odell Beckham. They have Evan Ingram, who didn't even play. You got Shepard. No, forget that. It's all Saquon Barkley. He's the franchise. That was moronic. And I'm an Eagles fan. I'm watching the game going, oh, shit, they're going to just run Barkley down our throats here. We're going to lose this game. And they just forget about him. It's like Andy Reid took over coaching the team all of a sudden.
And not only that, you got an Eagles secondary that's totally decimated by injuries, and you're not going down the field and testing them out all game. To me, it really looked like at halftime the Giants said, you know what, maybe we shouldn't win this game. We're really not going to have a chance to get into it anymore. Maybe we should start losing a few of these games so we can get a better draft pick, which makes all the sense in the world to me. And, why not give Kyle Lauletta a chance? But, does he really give you a worse shot to win than Eli? Probably not.
Eagles, Redskins, last game of the week. Carson Wentz. Brian, is he going to get 20 fantasy points against the Redskins?
Well, the way to beat the Redskins is to throw the football on him. So I think he's going to throw the rock. And hopefully we can get Elshon Jeffrey going here. The guy doesn't have more than 4 receptions since week 7. So he needs to get on the same page there. And it's funny because it's not like the Eagles don't have weapons. They just don't have vertical weapons. They have everybody who can win within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. But I think they're going to have a good opportunity.
Talent you have, why don't you use them that way? They're not using Tate right. They're not using Jeffrey right. They're going to Ertz everywhere. They're even getting Goddard more involved than in any of these wide receivers. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Again, Josh Adams is playing well for them right now, but this is a team, if they really wanted to be serious about winning and trying to get back to the Super Bowl again, it really boggles the mind that they didn't make a trade for a running back at the trade deadline. It just boggles the mind.
I think they needed a vertical threat. If they had a DeSean Jackson type on this team, that would help so much, because now the defense knows nobody's beating us over the top. You can condense everything down into the box. And up until this past week, they didn't have a running game to speak of. So really all you had to do was just sit down in these zones and you go, it's going to Ertz here. It's going to, on the outside, it's going to Alshon. There's nothing. Tate's worthless. They shouldn't have made that trade. That was a horrendous deal to give away a third-round pick for a rental player. Stupid move.
No, I don't agree with that, because I think Tate is much better than the way they're using him. Come on, he's one of the better slot receivers in this game. And the fact that they're not using him correctly, I'm not blaming Tate for that.
But you had Nelson Aguilar, who was very productive in the slot last year. Slot receiver wasn't your issue, and you're giving up a third-round pick for a guy who you're not going to re-sign.
Yeah, but they obviously had some kind of issue with Aguilar, because even before they made the trade, Aguilar had a nice start to the season, but then he just fell right off.
Because they started moving him outside. Yeah, they got Jordan.
Well, we knew he can't play outside. We've always known he can't play outside. That's how he started in the league. Never did nothing. He didn't do anything until they moved him to the slot.
Right. Which means he should stay
I had him on a bunch of teams last year, and that was the only reason. Is that you see that all the time, that certain guys, when they get into the slot, they take off. And I like the Aguilar coming out of college, so I figured he had a shot. But I agree, he'll do nothing outside. And I really think Golden Tate hurts the offense. And, Jim, you could be right. It's the way they're using them. But the offense, they have a lot of lateral guys. It reminds me of when Chad Pennington was the Miami Dolphins quarterback, and the Patriots would play him, and he only had to cover 20 yards down the field because Chad couldn't throw it more than that. And now the Eagles' offense is everything within 20 yards.
Yeah, but Chad was so accurate. Oh, so accurate. You can say what you want about Chad, but when he tried to put a ball into a tight corner, he could put a ball into a tight corner.
There you have it, folks. We coming for Week 13. Good luck for everybody that's getting it finished off. And, Jim, how's the Facebook page going? Do we still have people knocking down walls to get in?
Not so much since I kind of, stopped the flow. We still get a few every now and then asking to get in. Somebody invites them in, and I'll let them in, but definitely not like it was where we were getting 50 of them a day. But at the same time, we've also gotten rid of a lot of the snarky comments and stuff like that we were trying to stay away from. So it's a nice group now. Everybody seems to be playing well in their sandbox, and that's a good thing. That's what I want. And, a lot of people asking questions, a lot of people answering them. It's a great group. It's a great group. I'm
Brian,
glad it's working so well.
Brian, I think Jim's going to ask for money for a wall.
Well, if I do, I'll get some fantasy baseball players to pay for it.
Oh.
So, Brian, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, check me out on Twitter at Drake Fantasy. Outside of doing this show, we're over at fightingchancefantasy.com. Jim's doing a lot of great stuff there, some waiver wire articles, and you can check out our podcast that we do on Tuesday nights called the Tuesday Night Hustle. So but if you like this show, you might like that one. So go to Twitter at Drake Fantasy, find me there, ask me sit questions that I will absolutely get wrong and tell you to go F yourself when you come back at me.
And if you like air yards, that's the podcast you want to listen to.
I'm going to start tweeting air yard stuff right now.
Well, folks, everybody, thank you for coming out and joining us tonight. Good luck in Week 13. We hope you make your playoffs. And if you do, come back, see us next week. We'll answer all your questions next week. Hopefully propel you past Week 14 and into the semis and then into the championship week. Hopefully you'll be joining some of us there. Thank you all again, and we will see you next Wednesday.